चाओ चाओ दोस्तों, अगर मैं आपको पूछूं कि दुनिया में सबसे इंटेंस, सबसे फियर्स इंटरसिटी डार्बी कौन सा है, तो आपका क्या जवाब रहेगा? शायद बोका जूनियर्स वर्सेस रिवर प्लेट। दैट्स अ वेरी गुड शाउट। बट अगर मैं आपको टॉप 5 यूरोपियन लीग्स में पूछूं कि विच इज द मोस्ट fiercest intercity rivalry, तो ये जवाब रहेगा द Derby Della Capitale, the derby of the capital contested between eternal rivals Roma and Lazio in the city of Rome. जी हाँ, टॉप 5 यूरोपियन लीग्स में this is the most fiercest derby, and there is a lot of things that are at stake for both these teams. No one wants to lose the Derby Della Capitale, and in this video I'm going to give you a slight history about the Derby Della Capitale, the iconic moments that have taken place in the derby, and of course, as a Romanista, for me, my top 3 derby moments of all time. So without any further ado, let's start the video. So guys, before I say anything, I'm a Romanista. So मेरा थोड़ा bias है towards Roma, थोड़ा नहीं, काफी bias है. But I'm going to try to be neutral in this video, especially in the history part. And of course, I'm not going to be speaking about the Lazio wins, although उनके wins Roma से कम है. But we'll get to that eventually. Starting with the history of both these clubs, Lazio were founded in 1900, and टिपिकली हम कहते हैं कि लाजियो के जो फैन बेस है, दे आर मोर ऑफ द एलीट क्राउड एंड मोर ऑफ द एरिस्टोक्रेट्स विद इन द प्रोविंस ऑफ लाजियो. सो रोम इज अ सिटी इन द प्रोविंस ऑफ लाजियो. सो लाजियो के सपोर्टर्स थोड़े हाई क्लास, थोड़े स्नूटी हुआ करते हैं ट्रेडिशनली. रोमा were founded in 1927. 3 clubs merged together, Alba Odache, Roman and Fortido. So these 3 clubs merged together and founded AS Roma, the only club that backed out of this union were Lazio. ये एक हिस्ट्री है अबाउट रोमा जिसके बारे में मैं एक डिटेल्ड वीडियो बनाऊंगा, उसमें मैं ज्यादा बात करूंगा. बट सिंस वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द Derby Della Capitale, I'm going to stick to that. So Lazio opted out of this merger and the rivalry between these two clubs began. The first derby was played in 1929 and Roma won the first Derby Della Capitale against Lazio by a goal to nil. And this derby has got a lot of incidents in its history. हम लोग कुछ incidents के बारे में बात करेंगे. Some unsavory incidents to begin with, and some of course not so things that happened off the pitch as well that impacted stuff on the pitch as well. So the first memory that I have of the Derby Della Capitale is the year 2004, जहाँ पे एक रोम डर्बी था, रात की गेम थी, and it was very evenly contested between both the teams. I think the match was 1-1, and suddenly the match got abandoned because there was a rumor that spread across the stadium that a supporter had been killed outside the Stadio Olimpico in Rome by a police officer. Now, typically there have always been crowd trouble between these two clubs. And whenever the derby happens in the night, for the police it becomes a bit difficult to manage the crowd क्योंकि अंधेरे का वक्त रहता है and इतने सारे crowd होता है. So एक rumor था ऐसे, and both sets of ultras came onto the pitch, and there are images that are still very very etched in history क्योंकि आप देखते हो कि रेफरी है पापारेस्ता. He is on the phone with Adriano Galliani, who was the league president at the time. You have Roma captain Francesco Totti over there. All the players are kind of dumbfounded कि चल क्या रहा है, and the match was eventually called off. Now the rumor was later clarified कि वो rumor ही था, कोई बच्चे का मौत हुआ नहीं था, but there was a boy जो टीयर गैस के कारण उसको थोड़ा डिफिकल्टी हो रहा था ब्रीदिंग के लिए, तो उसको साइड में रखा गया था. तो शायद कुछ लोगों को लगा कि उसका देहांत हो गया, एंड वो बात स्टेडियम में पहुंची अंदर, और अंदर में जो वाइल्ड फायर जैसा एक अफवाह फैलता है वैसा फैल गया, एंड इट रीच द अल्ट्रास, एंड दे came and they wanted to protest and stop the match. Eventually the match was abandoned. It was replayed later without any crowd trouble, and the match finished 1-1. So this is the first incident that I have in mind when you talk about Roma Lazio, because by that time I had already begun supporting Roma, and ये स्पोर्ट्स सेंटर में ये न्यूज़ को इतना एम्पलीफाई किया था, वो बार बार उन लोग ये रिपोर्ट पे काफ़ी लोग रिपोर्ट्स रन कर रहे थे. सो दिस इज द फर्स्ट मेमोरी आई हैव अबाउट द रोमा लाजियो राइवलरी. इट इज इंटेंस. आप बोल सकते हो कि वन ऑफ द बेस्ट derbies where both the sets of teams present द कोरियोग्राफी, जो टीफो हम बोलते हैं, दोनों, तो लाजियो के जो फैंस है टिपिकली सिट इन द नॉर्दर्न साइड ऑफ द स्टाडियो ओलंपिको, एंड रोमा के जो हार्डकोर फैंस है, जो अल्ट्रास है, दे सिट इन द सदर्न साइड ऑफ द स्टाडियो ओलंपिको. सो कुर्वा नॉर्थ एंड कुर्वा सूद. Now, Roma and Lazio do share a stadium at this point of time, Stadio Olimpico. That wasn't always the case. Lazio had a different stadium. Roma had a different stadium in different points of history. In the future, again, there might be, the same thing that will be repeated when Roma and Lazio have separate stadiums. But आज के समय में, काफी समय से, Stadio Olimpico is the shared stadium. So, Curva North, Lazio, Curva Sud, Roma. And I have to say that both sets of fans present their best choreography when these two clubs play against each other. And that is one of the more positive aspects about the Derby Della Capitale. The choreography, the tifo, the color, the passion, the music, the joy that you see within sets of, each fans is second to none. Red Star Belgrade versus Partizan Belgrade, अगर मैं top 5 के बाहर बात कर रहा हूँ, that's a derby that lives up to this bill. With so much of anticipation, so much of anxiety, the chatter around the city. The city is consumed by the derby. Everyone stops everything else and only concentrates on the derby. And that culminates in probably one of the best tifo and choreography designs in world football. So that's a positive aspect about Roma versus Lazio. So, मैं start of the video में मैंने बात किया कि Lazio fans are more, I would say from the higher upper classes of society, and that has been seen within both sets of fans as well, because Roma ke fans culturally are the working class, normal citizens who are based in the center of Rome around areas like Testaccio, Trastevere. That's where you find a lot of Romanisti. So a couple of things that have gone, which has been very unsavory, of course, is the Lazio fans typically lean towards the right wing, whereas the Roma fans typically lean towards the left wing. Not getting very political over here, but of course, I have to mention it because it's part of the history of the Derby Della Capitale. There have been a couple of instances where the Lazio fans have, raised a lot of banners that are anti-Semitic. Of course, Paolo Di Canio, he did the famous fascist tribute, and in a Rome derby nonetheless, and that image became viral. And Paolo Di Canio is openly right wing, but that's his political stance. But he got that politics onto the football pitch as well. Unfortunately, कुछ ही साल पहले Lazio fans had photoshopped an Anne Frank picture. Anne Frank was one of the survivors of Auschwitz during the entire concentration camp, and her photo was photoshopped, wearing a Roma jersey, and it was circulated. Not the first time that the Lazio fans have, referred or, taken Auschwitz as one of the examples during their, demonstrations. Because there are a lot of Jewish fans in the working class population of Rome who are Romanisti. So unfortunately, ये एक unsavory incident भी हुआ था. And the first derby related, or the first fan death in Italian football, ये fixture में हुआ. Unfortunately, a Lazio fan lost his life when a Roma fan threw a flare, and that became the first casualty ever in Italian football. So there have been issues of a lot of back and forth between both these clubs. Of course, in more recent times, the crowd has been a little more well behaved, although Lazio recently, from their youth product, had given a chance to one of Mussolini's great grandsons who was playing for the Lazio Primavera, ironically on the right wing. I think he's loaned out to a lower division club now, and from a right winger he's become a right back. But yeah, I mean, all I would say, all these things aside, these are some of the most unpleasant things that have happened traditionally between Roma and Lazio. And I'm not blaming the entire fan base. There are a few bad apples. Not all Laziale are like that. Not all Romanisti are like that. And I've had the pleasure of actually meeting with a few Laziale जब मैं रोम गया था, and they were very very sweet. ऐसा कोई दिक्कत ना मुझे तो personally आया नहीं था in the few days I spent in Rome. Although it wasn't leading up to a Roma Lazio derby, but nevertheless मेरे साथ में ऐसा कोई unsavory incident हुआ नहीं है. And ठीक है, banter तो चलते रहता है. But I think when it comes to serious issues like this, it's better to keep everything out of banter, because वो एक line है जो आपको cross नहीं करना है. And for me as a football fan, I think it's safe to say that in the 21st century, in the modern era, I think let's just stick to football banter and nothing else. But these were some of the few highlighted incidents that have happened between Roma and Lazio in the past. So जैसे कि मैं आप लोगों को बोल रहा था कि Roma have won more derbies compared to Lazio. 199 times both these teams have faced each other, and Roma have won 74 times in that particular figure. Lazio have won 58 of these derbies, so Roma clearly edging that one out. And of course, the player who's made maximum appearances for Roma or Lazio in the Derby Della Capitale is, you're right, Francesco Totti. 11 goals in Serie A against Lazio. And एक आइकॉनिक उसका फ्रांचेस्को टॉटी का काफी आइकॉनिक सेलिब्रेशंस रह चुके हैं. One was when he removed his t-shirt and he said, "I've purged you again, viho purgata ancora." And then of course there was one derby where he was he took the camera and pointed towards the Roma fans. He became the cameraman. That's an iconic moment. And एक और था 2005-2006 में where he was expecting his first child with his ex-wife, and he scored a penalty and took the ball and जो typical जो footballers करते हैं. And of course the one iconic one that obviously all you guys must remember is when he scored a goal in the derby quite recently. Went to the Kurwa Sud. Remember the Kurwa Sud? Took out his phone, or rather his manager gave him, one of the Roma team managers gave him an iPhone, and he clicked the selfie. Wait, for better effect, click the selfie with the Kurwa Sud. So iconic moments. And एक सबसे मेरा पर्सनल लाइफ में जो एक ट्रैजिक मोमेंट रह चुका है is the 2013 Coppa Italia Italian Cup final, the only time that Roma and Lazio have faced each other. Unfortunately, Lazio won that Italian Cup, but that's the only time where I've been so down and out, man, because कुछ ही साल पहले Roma almost won the league, dramatically finished second to Inter, and उसके बाद में कुछ ही साल के बाद में you saw Roma Lazio competing for the Italian Cup for the first time ever, and Roma lost that derby by a goal to nil, and I've still not been able to recover from it. But yeah, these were some of the stats, and of course Francesco Totti dominates the Derby della Capitale. Marco Del Vecchio, another player who scored a lot of goals against Lazio. Vincenzo Montella, who has scored 4 goals in an iconic 5-1 away win for Roma. Although it's the same stadium, I know, but home and away to appoint karna padta hai. And Roma have won this fixture by 5 goals to 1 away, and Montella scoring 4 goals out of 5. Francesco Totti with a delicate chip. अगर आप YouTube में highlights देखोगे आपको मिल जाएगा. Wonderful game. Roma have also won by 5 goals to nil in the home leg, whereas Lazio's biggest win have been 3-0 wins. So clearly, when it comes to goals, scored as well, Roma have, scored a lot of iconic goals, and इस चीज में भी हम लोग Lazio से आगे हैं. The last part after this are I'm going to relive some of my favorite derby games, and after that we will end the video. अच्छा, एक चीज तो मैं आपको बोलने भूल गया. आप मिलान क्लब्स में देखोगे दोनों टीम में सिटी राइवल्स है, लेकिन एक भाईचारा है, क्योंकि एक ही फैमिली में आप दोनों सेट्स ऑफ टीम्स के सपोर्टर्स को आपको मिल जाता है. मतलब अगर चाचा इंटरनेशनल फैन है तो भतीजा कैन बी ए मिलान फैन, अगर मामा मिलान फैन है तो भांजा कैन बी एन इंटर फैन. तो ये सब मिलान में चलते रहता है, व्हिच इज व्हाई अ लॉट ऑफ प्लेयर्स आल्सो मूव between these two clubs. So the list of common players who played for both clubs is like a laundry list. इतने सारे players हैं. Whereas in Rome, you're either born on the giallorosso side, मतलब yellow and red, which are Roma's colors, or the bianco celesti, the white sky blue, which is the Lazio side, which is why you don't have a lot of players who played for both teams. Fulvio Bernardini has played for both clubs in the 1920s, and the Roma training center is also named after him. But otherwise, I don't know, like just off the bat, I remember Sinisa Mihailovic, who's played for both clubs, Luigi Di Baggio, who's played for both clubs, वो 90s में हुआ था ये. 2000s में तो I don't remember who was really moved, but हाल ही में you've seen a couple of Roma Academy players move to Lazio, and then they've confessed that the Lazio fans, सरासर झूठ है ये, इन लोग Roma fans ही थे, अब Lazio जा रहे तो उनको बोलना पड़ा. Alessio Romagnoli, जिसका मैं कहना चाहता हूँ कि भाई तुम जाओ गजेट ऑफिस में अपना नाम चेंज करे, Lazio Noli करो. And recently you had Luca Pellegrini also, left back, who went to Lazio. Pedro has played for both clubs as well. And of course, Alexander Kolarov, who was a Lazio product, went to Man City, of course, and then eventually came to Roma. And Mihailovic and Kolarov are also two players who scored for both Roma and Lazio during derbies in the modern time. There's one more player. I think only 3 players have scored for both Roma and Lazio in the Derby Della Capitale. So that's a very, very chota list of players who've had pasts with these two clubs, and typically you don't see them dealing in the transfer market like how you see the Milan clubs do, or maybe a Chelsea, Arsenal in London, or a Real Atletico. Rome में भाई होता नहीं है. Either you're Gelorosso or you're Bianco Celesti. So that's a very, very rare thing that happens in the Roma Lazio rivalry. Coming to the end of the video, I'm going to give you my top 3 matches, my best moments. Of course, I mentioned to you the 5-1 win, but I had not watched that game. It is an iconic win. I've watched an away win, 4-1, where I think El Sharawi scored with a header, Edin Dzeko scored a goal, Diego Perotti scored a goal, but that doesn't make my top 3 list. My top 3 list is coming after this. Starting at number 3, this is a 2-0 win. Actually, my top 3 best Rome derbies for me as a Roma fan are all 2-0 wins. Okay, तो ये मैं आपको spoiler alert दे रहा हूँ. So सबसे पहली जो derby थी वो थी 2005-06 की, जब Roma were on a 10-match unbeaten run. 10 consecutive games Roma had won, and at that time the record was 10. So Roma needed one more win to make it 11, which would have been the league record back then. And Francesco Totti got a career-threatening injury, and Luciano Spalletti was the coach. And the 11th game was against Lazio, poetically. So Roma needed to win the game to get that record, and Totti was injured. And uske baad mein, lot of uncertainty was there during the build-up of the derby, I remember. And typically, आप देखोगे कि derby में आपका जो form है वो भाड़ में जाता है, क्योंकि derby is just a one-off, and form, records, big names, सब खिड़की के बाहर. Because on the day, 90 minutes का performance is all that matters. ठीक है? And it was a very nervous start. But Roma, I remember, took the lead through a flicked Rodrigo Tadai header. And Alberto Aquilani, another born and brought up Romanista, Roma through and through, local boy, scored the second goal, which was a nail in the coffin for Lazio. And I remember after the game, you had everyone on the pitch with Totti in like crutches and celebrating and everything. 11 consecutive wins, Roma's record at that time, most consecutive wins. And of course, a win against Lazio is always good. So that is number 3 for me. Number 2 pe, another 2-0 win, like I mentioned. This was the 2013-14 season under Rudi Garcia. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था, lot of changes had happened. 2011-12 में, 2012-13 में, Roma had lost the Italian Cup final. Luis Enrique का जो experiment था वो fail हो गया था, and Rudi Garcia had come in, and Roma were looking to rejuvenate and get back into the Champions League. And इस पे Rudi Garcia के बहुत बेहतरीन शब्द थे इटालियन में, जो उसने कहा था कि un derby non si gioca, un derby si vince. मतलब you don't play a derby, you win the derby. And what a derby it was, man. A lot of emotion over there. And the first goal was scored by Federico Balzaretti, and he cried after that. So this derby is known as the Tears of Balzaretti derby. and I think Adam Yajic scored the second goal. 2-0 win for Roma, and that pretty much, put Roma back in the top half of the table. That season, end of the season, where Roma came back into the Champions League, and that culminated with obviously that Roma comeback against Barca. So I feel that season, that derby win meant a lot. And as a fan, so many emotions, because Roma had not beaten Lazio since a long time, and that Italian Cup final derby ka jo, loss was haunting all of us. And this kind of lifted everything. And Rudy Garcia also said something very, very, ऐतिहासिक after the game. He said that finally the church is in the center of the village. That means that Roma had the bragging rights for the derby, and all was well with the universe. Coming to my number one, another iconic Roma win. This was 2010-2011, if I'm not mistaken. Francesco Totti, 36-year-old Francesco Totti. A lot of questions were asked about his fitness, whether he still had it, or whether it was time for him to hang up his boots. And this was a rainy night in Rome, and Roma Lazio was very, very intense. Lot of flying tackles, I think there were red cards, सब कुछ था. Because ये game में बहुत लफड़ा होता है. Roma Lazio के game में you have a lot of red cards, lot of scuffles, lot of fights. लोग एकदम मारने के लिए उतरते हैं. It's a very intense derby, and the deadlock was broken by Francesco Totti himself when he hit a low free kick, and that I think went through Fernando Muslera's legs, the Lazio goalkeeper. And then of course he had a late penalty that Francesco Totti just blasted it in the net. मतलब इतने जोर से मारा कि वो नेट से पूरा पानी गिर गया, बारिश गिर रही थी. And then he again jumped into the kurwa, removed his t-shirt and celebrated. And वहाँ पे एक ऐतिहासिक quote आया, because the commentator Richard Whittle, the English commentator, जिसको I had also met at the Stadio Olimpico, he came up with the golden words: "The King of Rome is not dead." Iconic words. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm just reliving that, derby all over once again. And by God, for me, that is my number one Roma Lazio memory that I have watched. And of course, as a Roma fan, it gives me a lot of joy that I've seen a lot of derby wins. I've seen a lot of derby defeats as well, so good times, bad times. It's all part of football. And I think with that, we can come to the end of the video. If you watched till here, I'm so thankful. This is a very, very special video because this is so close to my heart. Roma Lazio, like any derby, is very competitive, but for me, it is extra special. And I generally don't like talking about Roma Lazio on screen because इतने सारे emotions आते हैं. तो I think ये 6 महीने के जर्नी में मैं आप लोग के साथ इतना मैं जुड़ गया हूँ कि I can share it. खुले से मैं शेयर कर सकता हूँ कि what I feel about this fixture and what it means, despite me living so many miles away from Rome. The intensity is still felt over here. वही intensity है, वही anxiety है, वही सब कुछ है. And obviously, I want Roma to win this derby at all costs. So the derby is on Sunday. It's a late night game. After many years, finally this game that was played in the daytime has been given a nighttime approval. Fingers crossed that nothing unsavory happens and we have a very, very good derby spectacle on the pitch, nothing off the pitch. And if you're a Laziale, if you feel offended, I don't know. I try to be neutral. There are some things that you may take it the other way, but hey, Forza Roma sempre. With that, it's Arrivederci for now. Thank you so much, guys. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm Ajay Menon. You are on my channel, Ajay Menon Sports. I'm a Romanista. Sempre dai Roma. Until next video, it's ciao.